One Step Ahead by Lundquist and Beslick.
Welcome to One Step Ahead Radio, another session, another week. Last week we had a break. It was a Swedish national holiday, National Day, the independency or the national celebration of Sweden. And this week we move away from Sweden into the world. And James, nice to have you here again.
Nice to be here.
How are you doing? You're doing fine?
Yeah, getting warm. People who don't know, but I live and work in and around Milan, and the temperature is climbing. And I'm English, so I don't like that so much.
Oh no!
We're going to talk about that a bit.
Well, yeah, we're gonna sort of lean onto that one.
The asphalt is getting warm.
Yes, and it is getting warm around the world. There are some alarming news coming out of the latest sort of reports and research that has been done by the EU's Earth Observation Service called Copernicus, which is basically saying that the global average sea surface temperature in May was 20.79 Celsius, which is just 0.14 Celsius below the record in the same month, 2024. The world's ocean temperatures reached the second highest level on the record for May. Basically, it's an alarming 2-year streak of rapid warming. And, you know, James, the thing is that the level of CO2 in the atmosphere peaked globally at the mean of 426 parts per million in March. It's up from 423 parts per million a year ago. So we are moving up all the time. We are, despite all the conversations happening in this space. I mean, we touched upon many of them over the course of many of these sessions. I mean, CO2 emissions are going out. Oceans are compensating or absorbing some of the heat, but they're getting so warmed up that it will be difficult for oceans to continue doing that. And apparently the impact of this are sort of a long-term impact, not really short-term, but because things in nature happens in a slow pace. So, I mean, going back to Milan, it's so hot. What do you think? I mean, it seems that we are getting these reports. It's fairly alarming. And in the same time, this is not really hitting the front page of the newspapers. It's sort of in a separate section. What we're reading about is something else, what's going on the trade side between the US and China and so on.
Sure.
I mean, how can we make people be more engaged in this topic? You know, do we need to educate more?
Yeah, no, it's incredible because, you know, it seems, you know, we'll adapt to it because we have a kind of, I'm talking about the rich world, but, you know, we can adapt to it and we can have air conditioning and we can kind of adjust to ever higher temperatures, you know, because there's hot parts of the world and they, you know, find ways to deal with it. And I love all those LinkedIn posts, you know, about how not having so much asphalt in the city and having these beautiful trees and covers and water flowing underground helps us. You know, those are all very important things and helps keep cities livable. But it's kind of part of a narrative whereby, you know, if only we kind of adjust, we'll adjust, you know, adapt rather than mitigate, then that's going to be all right. And I was interested in the fact that you start with picking out the sea temperature, because this past few weeks I've read a fantastic book by Richard Powers, his new novel called Playground. And if people don't know him and are interested in the environment, he's written some very, very beautiful and evocative novels. And this one's all about the ocean. And it's not all about the ocean. It is largely about ocean and people who travel and explore the ocean, and how big it is and how little we know about it. You know, we know more about the surface of the other planets in our solar system than we do about what's going on under the waves, and just how much water that is when you say that, you know, even if it's just the surface, you know, increasing in temperature, it's such a huge, enormous cycle that we depend on, and that we live on our little pieces of land, which actually aren't the most part of the planet.
This planet, yes, correct. Yeah.
So it's not even just about, it's not on the headlines because it's not, the main news, but it's not even in our thoughts because most of us don't understand the oceans.
No.
We don't see them. I don't live near the sea, so I don't really think about it.
No.
So it's something that needs to be brought home in a different way, perhaps.
I mean, yeah, our relationship to planet, including the oceans, is sort of a commoditized. I mean, if you also think about this, quadrupled need for rare metals and different kinds of things that we need to power AI energy going forward, and a lot of sort of ocean mining that is now beginning to take place in different parts of the world. Although we don't have international agreement on how this can be done in a responsible way, it's sort of pushing us into this discussion. What are we doing? I mean, are we really, on a, I would say, intellectual level, but also on an emotional level, understanding dependencies we have in this context? I don't know.
Yes, indeed. What else has been on your radar this week?
I mean, there is a fantastic new thing that has come up that was just recently published on Bloomberg, which is the study that has been done by Bloomberg NEF, which is the New Economy Foundation, and one of the analysts there. They've taken a unique approach to study about 68,000 investment funds. We have to sort of dwell on that number. It's 68,000 investment funds.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And
A lot of them.
they've taken a unique approach, basically trying to establish the connection between the asset managers' investments in energy companies and the knock-on effect on the efforts to limit warming to critical threshold of 1.5 degrees. The so-called Energy Supply Fund Enable CapEx ratio looks at the fund manager's holdings in companies involved in the supply of energy, whatever through extraction, transportation, or generation. Basically, I mean, the analysts found of these 68,000 funds that for every 10 million of capital expenditure investment devoted to fossil fuel production, only 4.8 million supported the supply of low carbon energy equivalent. The ratio is 148 to 1. And this is 0.48 to 1. And this is something that we have been discussing before, and this sort of using financial market as a leverage to help mitigate and to a certain extent adopt. We are not mitigating, and we are certainly not investing in adaptation either. So the question is, how serious is this fact that global financial industry is still not really reflecting the facts on the ground, which are, quite alarming from both, the heat perspective and agriculture impact and all of these other things.
Because also, this, it's very interesting and something that really, needs to be read and analyzed and people to understand it. It's not a kind of report that has a simple headline. You've got to get your head around it. But what's interesting is that it focuses on energy, which, in my mind was kind of as being the most obvious and heavily discussed and invested kind of area of ESG, right? In terms of where money can be put to work, because it seemed to be that investing through energy themes was the most easy to comprehend, easy to measure, to get into and to mobilize capital in favor of climate action. But what we're seeing is that what was going to be the leading driving force in sustainable finance actually isn't making that enough of an allocation as it could otherwise have been. That's how I read it. How would you see it, or what do you think are the reasons behind that?
This sort of a conversation we have been having for the last 20 years about using financial machinery, because it is a machinery, and the tools, which are investment tools on the lending and investment side, to sort of transform or reallocate capital in a responsible way, generating profits, but at the same time creating long-lasting positive impact. It's still in many cases a just theoretical thing, because if you have this ratio, which is 1.48 to 1, it means that, for
0.48. You keep on making that mistake.
I'm sorry.
Go to the back of the class.
Yeah. So it's like, come on, it's not really happening. And it's not happening because I think in many ways, financial industry does not perceive itself as the part of the problem or the challenge that we are facing, because it's just reflecting what consumers, politicians, and businesses need and want. So there's this big question about, fiduciary duty in terms of what is the actual role of financial industry in this context. And that's something that, it has been addressed previously, but it's still really not there. So the question is, for a bank, if you say, just to make it very simple, so I'm selling you a pension scheme, savings in mutual funds, and you're buying one sustainable ESG fund, and then I sell you 4 others which are invested in the companies across the world that there are heavy CO2 emitters. You get this good feeling that you're at least doing something. You're investing $1 in sustainability and then 4 in something else. You're actually not doing anything. You're shooting yourself in both feet, because you're not making any change, and you're putting more money in something that is not sustainable. So it's this game, and I don't really understand if people grasp the impact they have through their pensions and investments on this. It's far bigger than the impact they make, symbolically, which is important, on choosing the ways of transportation, or, doing other things like not eating meat and so on.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's true. It's there's always those classic questions like who should be, which are the most important actors for driving the energy transition or climate action or sustainable development goals? Is it, investors, or is it institutions, or is it, corporates? And it's like as if it's like an either or question, who should be taking the lead, and everyone kind of looks at everyone else saying, well, they haven't done, they haven't given me the necessary regulatory framework or the clarity or the right data, or they're not, making the investment decisions. And we have this kind of circular, endless passing the buck, as it were.
Yeah.
Year on year.
I mean, the thing is about, I'm going back to this, and I'm going to I'm going to be stuck into this conversation about the education and getting people to understand, how it really works. Because one of the biggest problems, I think, for many individuals not working in the industry, financial industry, is this lack of financial literacy to understand actually how this is done, because it's not that easy, to be honest. And the thing is, if you sort of don't offer, and this is what companies are not doing today, and not talking only about banks, but also other companies, they're not getting paid for the sustainability work because their clients, they have no idea how to value what they do, because they haven't been educated. And in the same way, most of the financial players do not educate their clients on how they can actually understand what banks are doing or not doing in this context. So you have this sort of a disadvantage, and it's getting worse. I just want to pick up on the other news, which is very interesting, is that this the major US climate website likely to be shut down after almost all staff has been fired. Government website supporting public education on climate science looks likely to be shut down after almost all of its staff were fired. And this is the getaway site for National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is NOAA, Climate Program Office, and many others. If we are killing the educational sources or access to that, it's going to become even more complicated to get people to understand what it is.
Well, I think that's the point in this case. I think that's specifically what they're trying to achieve, and I think it's fundamental for anyone who believes in climate action and taking action in terms of sustainability. What you were exactly saying before is the importance of education in the widest possible sense, understanding, dissemination, giving people the means to take decisions, to act, to vote, to decide their pension funds, to decide which bank to put their money in, to understand where the levers are, and rather than despair, for example, the first news that we had that you pulled out around heating oceans, rather than despair, feel that they actually have agency around that. And it's not, well, the big banks don't know anything and the UN doesn't do anything. Why should I? Otherwise, it's a circular logic. So
yeah. And the thing is that we are, we have the tools, and there's somebody. I mean, sometimes people are saying, yeah, but we have the solution, we have technology, but we're actually not deploying it for various reasons because of the various motives, and that's how it is. I want to end up this one with this session with one more observation. The UN development chief Achim Steiner has came out saying that in terms of international finance development, which is of course one of the big tools and pools of money that is used to support emerging markets, economies, and developing countries to transform, has been butchered for the last year. I mean, it's like in a country like Sweden, I think that the aid, this kind of aid, has been slashed by 40% in January this year. Various reasons, the war in Ukraine, the new economic situation, and all of that. But it is these kind of investments that international agencies like UNDP and many others actually need to support. Otherwise, we're going to end up having, more wars and more conflicts going forward. And there was another news that was related to this in terms of, expecting that the risk of conflicts increasing by triple next 30 years. I'm going back to what I said originally, how do we make people, not only how we get it on the front page, but actually how we get people to start getting really seriously engaged? I know it's not an easy question, James, but we can end up on that one if you can give us a comment on that.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, you mentioned Sweden, but in my own home country of the UK, reducing international aid funding down to 0.3% of gross national income in 2027. After having been a leader in terms of that, it was up to 0.7% previously, and so even the Labour government, which you would have thought would defend that kind of spending, is putting that money into the defence industry, and very much realpolitik, because they need to find ways to increase the budget and NATO spending and all of these things. So it's being driven very much by these very short-term, very near-term near-term demands, and it's kind of either or. At the moment, government budgets are very, very stretched, and everyone's indebting themselves in order to be able to fight wars and not to make peace and invest in development. So yes, disturbing trends.
Disturbing developments. And James, thanks again for joining for this session. Hopefully we can provide some more positive insights next week. This was all.
We can always try.
We can always try. Thank you, James. All the best to you, and have a great weekend, and we'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you again soon.